Go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy to get 20% off your first month of cognitive behavioural therapy, with weekly sessions online with a therapist, in addition to worksheets, a journal, meditation and yoga videos, and unlimited messaging. There's strong evidence that CBT can help people who hoard, and accessing therapy online can be affordable and accessible. Find out more and get your discount at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy.
A lot can happen in the next 3 years. Like a chatbot may be your new best friend. But what won't change? Needing health insurance. United Healthcare Tri-Term Medical Plans are available for these changing times. Underwritten by Golden Rule Insurance Company, they offer budget-friendly, flexible coverage for people who are in between jobs or missed open enrollment. The plans last nearly 3 years in some states, with access to a nationwide network of doctors and hospitals. So for whatever tomorrow brings, United Healthcare Tri-Term Medical Plans may be for you. Learn more at uh1.com.
Say hello to a new era of mental health care. Cerebral is here to help you achieve your mental wellness goals with professional therapy and medication management support. 100% online. You'll experience the all-new Cerebral Way, an innovative approach to mental wellness designed around you. You'll get a personalized treatment plan from a therapist, prescriber, or both in a safe and judgment-free space. Your Cerebral therapist or prescriber will outline a customized plan with clear milestones along the way, so you can get to feeling your best. With Cerebral, you're not alone in your mental health journey. We're here to empower you to live a fulfilling life. So take that first step towards a brighter future and sign up today at Cerebral.com/podcast and use code ACAST to get 15% off your first month. Offer only valid on monthly plans. Other exclusions may apply. Offer ends July 31st, 2024. See site for details. Think of all the sleep hacks you've ever heard. You could spend years trying them all, or you could instantly transform your sleep with Boll & Branch. They make the softest, most breathable bedding you'll ever feel. And it's all 20% off. That's their best sale of the entire season. Millions of sleepers love their buttery soft sheets, airy blankets, cloud-like duvets, and so much more. And you can try all of them for 20% off with promo code BUTTERY20. So hurry to bollandbranch.com today. That's BOLL and branch.com. See site for details.
Welcome to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder podcast. I am drowning in stuff and trying to find a way out. Listen as I explore the issues and delve deep as somebody profoundly affected by hoarding disorder. Find out more, including links to subscribe to the podcast and all my social media at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. Finally, I am not a doctor. I'm just a hoarder doing her best. So do seek professional support if and when you need it. I am here with Lesley Spellman, a professional organiser and clutter fairy in Manchester. Lesley is one half of the Declutter Hub podcast, where, along with her co-host Ingrid, she has made over 230 episodes on all things decluttering. They are both professional organisers and former members of the board of the Association of Professional Declutterers and Organisers. They launched the Declutter Hub podcast, Declutter Hub online community, online courses, and a membership site to help people declutter. Lesley, how are you?
I'm great, and I'm delighted to be here to talk to you today. How very exciting to be with a fellow podcast host.
Thank you so much for coming. So I guess the place to start is, how did you get into professional organising? Have you always been someone who can make order out of chaos?
It's actually something that's quite interesting because, you talked about my co-host and business partner, Ingrid. She's like your classic kind of organised person, loves to fold, very practically led. And what we both realise now, I'm very emotionally led, but I've never really been that much of a deep thinker, if that makes sense. But in terms of where my journey started, it's an interesting one. So about 15, 16 years ago, I bought a derelict property. So quite a big Victorian derelict property that had previously been lived in by somebody who was a hoarder. And so when I got the house, so this house was a kind of infamous house in the area. People used to walk past. stair C. So we're talking, very high levels of hoarding. You couldn't get into the house through the front door. He had a platform around the side to get in. You couldn't get up the stairs. And so there was a kind of ladder in the stairwell. So very, very high levels. And also that was very clear outside the house as well. 14, 15 cars in the drive, all the way around the kind of front garden, back garden, and so on. Now, when I first viewed the property, it was obviously an interesting one. It was kind of a sealed bid scenario. Everyone wanted this house. It's a beautiful house, but it had been lived in by this guy. The house was empty, so it had been cleared by house clearance after he had died. But the garden and the garage was still full, so it was still as it was before. So I got some kind of sense of what that looked like before in the house. Fast forward, bought the house, started to transform the property. It had been a little bit of an eyesore in people's eyes in the community, so people were very interested in the transformation.
Yeah.
Which was lovely. So people used to walk past, people used to talk to me at the front drive and be very, what I felt was be very, very disparaging about the guy that had lived here and the effect that had had on the community. And it bothered me because even though I felt I'd been given this gift of this beautiful home, and I felt that emotional connection to him, and I felt that I didn't understand it then because I wasn't in the industry. But I was like, why so mean? Like, why are you all so mean about this person who's lived here? And so I think that's where the seeds were sown. And a year later, I went into professional organising. So I didn't go in specifically to work with people who hoard, but that evolved into that later. So that's my story, which is quite an interesting one. So that's how it all started.
It is. That's quite an origin story. I can see why, if you hadn't been exposed to that as an issue before, then moving into a home that had previously been in that state, and especially encountering the stigma, even after he died, that people were still kind of disapproving, would make you think, how does that happen? And, what's going on in that story?
Well, people are very selfish, aren't they? And sort of, we're inherently selfish and think about ourselves is kind of this NIMBY sort of scenario, isn't it? Not in my backyard. And so, but I just was really astonished all the time by the fact that nobody ever said, he had a mental health issue. It was, people would say it was sad. Okay, fine. But didn't really understand. It was all like, but it wasn't good for me as I was, it wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for this community. And you have taken this and you have fixed that problem for us. And thank you. And so it was, I just found it interesting. So, I never met him. But I feel now that the work that I do, I completely understand what he went through and why the home was as it was.
Amazing.
I bet you weren't expecting that origin story, were you?
I was not. That's really interesting. So today, what we're going to talk about is how people who hoard can ask for help and what they can expect when they do that. So a lot of hoarders are very anxious at the prospect of asking for help. In your experience, what tend to be the barriers that people face when deciding whether to ask for help? What can get in the way there?
I think the problem is that anybody who has had hoarding tendencies, hoarding disorder, lived with hoarding tendencies, has always been judged their whole lives. They've always felt judged by other people and ashamed. It's exactly the same as the story that I was just telling you. And so your guard is up already because you feel that everybody that comes into your world is going to be the same and judge you. You feel obviously a sense of embarrassment. You feel a sense of guilt. If there are other people in your family, there's guilt involved in that. There's many. I'm sure you've spoken about that on your podcast many times. All of the emotions that go along with that are very negative emotions, and you have protected yourself by putting this guard around you for the most part, and then to kind of break that barrier down and to be completely open to somebody who might then come in and make things worse. Is a tough thing to kind of open yourself up to, even in what let's call it standard decluttering. So people who haven't got hoarding tendencies but have still got high volumes of things, it's still a big deal, right? To open your home up to your most intimate details and things and sentiments, and let somebody in and go, okay. And you're not giving people free reign, but you are giving people a window into your world. And asking them to help you to move that forward. And that's not an easy jump. And so it has to be the right person. It has to be somebody. And we're going to talk about how you find that later, I guess. But I think that's the problem. It is because people who have hoarding behaviours have been let down in the past. And that's by lots of people who have judged them. And it's hard to break through that.
And as you say, I think everybody feels a bit weird if somebody, even if a friend came round, if they started going through your cupboards and looking in your drawers, that would still feel weird, wouldn't it? And so if you've got extra emotional attachments or reactions to stuff, it's going to be heightened.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's just an unusual scenario. Somebody comes into your house as a stranger and then, well, hopefully it's not 10 minutes later, but after an initial chat and a little bit of trust is built up, really got to go out there on a limb and go, okay, I'm going to go all in here. I'm going to try, you've got to kind of make that first mental leap, but it's a strange scenario. Yeah. No one else is opened up to the most intimate details of your life so quickly. And so that's what it's about. So it is an unusual kind of relationship, let's call it.
I can imagine. Yeah. So what would you say are the differences, I guess both positive and negative, between asking a friend or a family member for help compared to asking a professional like you for help?
I think if you find the right professional to help you, there's no backstory. So a lot of people who will help you, so people who want to help you have got sometimes people are very well-meaning, right? But we've seen a lot of instances where it is negative rather than positive, has a negative result. And that's the stories that we hear, because people who come into our world, whether it's for me with my Clutter Fairy business or into the Declutter Hub, have still got a problem with clutter, right? So the help has been there, offered in the past in certain ways, and it's not quite worked out well. And it leads people feeling more attached to stuff or more resentful of things that have happened. I think the difference with the professional is we're there for you. We want to achieve what you want to achieve, and we're not there with our own agenda. And I think, so if somebody thinks, my friend really needs some help, let me go and help her this weekend. I think I know what she needs. She needs less stuff. She needs a space clearing so she can get into her bed. Blah, blah, any of those things that one might think that somebody else needs. And your mission then as that friend is to make that happen. Now, that's not the agenda typically of the person that requires the help, probably hasn't asked for the help. And so I think, but as professionals, we're there for you. And so it's like your journey, your pace, your decisions. If you are happy to let go of 5 things in a session, that's brilliant. If you're happy to let go of 500 things in a session, that's probably even better in our eyes, because we know that you're moving further to your goal, I guess. But it doesn't matter. And we're not going to judge you for the progress that you make. Whereas a friend who comes in might feel disappointed, might feel a little bit more resentful of the time that they've given you and the progress that they perceived that would happen that hasn't happened. So I think it's that. I think it's just taking out that kind of the goal, first of all. I think it's also, if it's somebody else in your family, that often comes from a place of, if it's a sibling, you had this impact on mum or dad, you've caused problems, equally if it's, do you see what I mean? There's a resentment that often has grown up over the past few years that sits there as a residual problem. And as a professional, we don't know the backstory. You might choose to tell us the backstory, or may not. You know what I mean? It's just, we can only go forwards with the information that we've got today, because what happened in the past, of course, that has a huge impact, particularly if you've got hoarding behaviours. It's relevant, right? But it doesn't dictate what happens going forwards. And so I think that's the difference between a friend who's not a professional, who's not done this many times. At the end of the day, we've done it a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so we have learnt through being exposed to homes, to stuff, to people, to emotions, to traumas, to triggers, and that's why, if you're asking for help to a professional, that also needs to be somebody who has had a lot of exposure to those kind of things, before they come in and help you. So it's not a job for a standard professional organizer. They need to have expertise in this area.
That thing about prioritizing is really interesting. If a friend of mine came in and said, we need to clear this space, but I didn't really care about that space,
yeah,
I wouldn't be able to get super motivated to do it. I still wouldn't get what I was hoping for, which might be clearing a different space. I think it was when you interviewed Jasmine.
Yeah.
What's her surname? I can't remember.
Jasmine Slay.
I will link to any episode we mention in the show notes. I think it was that interview, and she was saying about a situation where there was a man who had a lot of stuff on his bed, and so the bed was cleared, but he still wasn't sleeping in the bed because it wasn't the stuff on his bed that was stopping him sleeping there. It was anxiety about, it was trauma related, and he needed to feel safer in order to sleep in his bed. And so people without experience might clear the bed and go, well, that's fixed now. But actually there's more to it.
Yeah, no, I thought, that was a really powerful story, actually. And I learned from that as well, because I might be like, oh, that would be a great thing to do. And in fact, the person might say that that's what they want to happen as well. Do you know what I mean? So it's not, so sometimes we go along with what people say, of course, but subconsciously that's not actually what they want. But do you know what I mean? So I think, whenever I've been working with somebody with hoarding behaviours, it's very much, we're probably not getting anywhere near unless we're doing multiple sessions of clearing a bedroom. Let's face it, we're talking about, let's start to work on some emotional connection to some things and see what we can let go of today in an area that seems as if it's going to work for you today. I think that's it. So I think whenever I've worked in, sometimes when I've worked, we can make a kind of blanket decision. And so somebody might say to me, do you know what? I'm happy to let go of all those magazines that are related to craft. And so I can scoot around and try and find all those. And it's going to make an impact in terms of the volumes and the kind of aesthetic then. But it's a rarity for me to go into somebody who's got a very, very full home and set a goal which is similar to somebody who in a standard decluttering where it's like, I want to be able to have clear work surface in my kitchen. So it's different. It's slower. We might get to that goal later, but early doors, we're not even thinking about that kind of goal.
Yeah. You've mentioned kind of picking the right professional organizer, which is obviously a huge consideration. From what I can see from the outside, the example I always give is there are professional organizers whose ideal is to do like the real finessing. They can make an already tidy room perfect, and they can color code and they can label and that kind of thing. And those people are not the people to work with if you're hoarding. They are brilliant at what they do. I'm not denigrating that, that type of work, but it's not the kind of person you need if you're hoard. Some people work in businesses to organize processes. And then there are professional organizers who are used to working in more cluttered environments, maybe specifically with hoarders, maybe not, but with experience of more extreme clutter. How do people find a professional organizer who won't run screaming from a hoarded house?
It's really a really interesting question, actually. But I think regardless of if you want to work with somebody who's a professional organizer, it's all about, so you're going to get that information from their website, mostly. You're going to get that information. So you have to have a feel. So the professional organizer needs to explain to you what makes them tick. And so on our website for the Clutter Fairy, there's 10 of us now, and we pick people to work with us based on their backgrounds. I couldn't care less whether somebody can tidy a shelf or fold a t-shirts. I wouldn't even ask that. I presume that because they've asked to work for us, that they've got some semblance of being able to organize, and that kind of makes them tick. But I'm interested in whether they've got experience of working with people with ADHD, what kind of sympathy have they shown in their past? What kind of background do they come from? Do they come from the NHS? Have they worked in social services, probation? We've just taken somebody on now who is a foster carer. So I'm looking for empathy. Rule number one, that's the kind of organizer. And so everybody in the Clutter Fairy, for example, has something in their life that demonstrates that they are inherently a caring person that is emotionally led. So we're looking, and in the Declutter Hub we are very emotionally led. Yes, we talk about folding and storage and organization, of course we do, but it's kind of 10% of what we do. We are all about the emotions. What is it about your emotional connection to stuff that is holding you back from making a rational decision? And so it's all about the emotional connection to stuff. And that's no different, whether that is somebody who hoards or somebody who just has clutter, no different at all. It's all about the emotional connection. The emotions are the same. The backstory might be different, the triggers might be different, the mental health conditions might be different. But inherently, we're looking at guilt and worry and sentiment and all of the emotions. And so to get back, I'm kind of going about this in a roundabout way, but the website needs to suggest emotion, empathy, non-judgment. Look at the words, look at the keywords that are being said, look at their bios. What are they saying? Don't be interested in somebody said, I can declutter your wardrobe, your bedroom. Of course you can, because that's what you do for a job. I'm more interested in what's your backstory? What have you done that connects with me? And do you even talk about hoarding on the website? That's a big one as well. If you are somebody who, it's difficult, right? Because it's easier now, but back then, so we did a lot of hoarding work in the past. We still do a little bit, but there was no one who was experienced, right?
Yeah.
And so it was difficult. So professional organisers who perhaps weren't as experienced as they should be, like us, to be fair, in the beginning, were going out there and working, which is good because then we get the expertise and,
Everybody starts somewhere. Everybody has a first job, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah. But I think, it's probably a good thing to work with somebody who talks about experience with hoarders or has a background in that kind of, many, many people who exclusively work. There's lots of people who just work exclusively with people with hoarding behaviors. And so probably go down that route. But again, it's got to be the right person. It's got to be somebody who you trust, who you have that gut feeling about when you first meet them or when you first have that phone call. We're very keen on the initial chat we want somebody to go, I feel better already just having spoken to you for 10 minutes. You get me, and that's what we want. That doesn't mean to say, and most people that we talk to get to that stage, but it might be that we then go into a home and then we see things and we're like, we're not the best people to help you. We need to, and luckily now we have people that we can pass people on to if we feel that we're not the best people, because that's important as well. You need to find the right person for you, and we need to know that we're the best person for you. So that's what you need to be looking for. Don't look at decluttering this, decluttering that, irrelevant. Look for the backstory and the emotional connection, and where is that professional organizer demonstrated either expertise or empathy.
And personality, I hadn't really thought about it, but personality is important. If you click with somebody compared to if you feel awkward around them, if nothing else, you're going to be spending 3, 4, 6 hours with them. You want to even just be able to have a chat while you're working, and as well as the more difficult stuff.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for people that I work with, humor is a big thing. If that works for the person, to get to a state, because it is kind of, the bottom line is sometimes it's not funny. I'm not trying to say it's funny, but there are funny things.
There are moments, yeah.
Right, why have I kept this thing here? That's crazy. And and if you can get to a stage where I'm not saying that you're going to laugh your way through and go, ha, why did you do that? But humor can be a big thing to break down barriers and things like that. And so you need to click with the right person, and it needs to be, so for somebody like me, and I've been doing this for 13 years and I've changed over those 13 years. And so I spend most of my life now talking about it rather than doing it, if that makes sense. But it's about patience. There are people on my team that are way more patient than me. And sometimes my patience, I'm like, I don't know whether I've got the patience to sit for half an hour over one decision, but some people might be, and it's finding that. And so I need to know when I'm not the right person and when it's not going to work for me I've got to be fulfilled in what I'm doing at work as well to make me want to go back again tomorrow. But really it's about, you need to find somebody who gets such, we love at the Declutter and the Clutter Fairy, the transformations, whether that's getting rid of one bag of things in a day or whether that's a whole house, to see the transformation in people when they feel good about what they've done and the progress that they've made is everything. And that has not waned over the last 13 years. I was reading our member forum this morning before we started recording, and I just love it so much that light bulbs go on and people are seeing a way through and making positive changes to their homes as a result of, just stuff. But it's not just stuff, is it? Does that make sense? If you can break through that barrier, but it's not easy, and it can be a lifelong journey for many people.
The thing about humour, I agree it's important. Years ago, a mental health support worker of mine was helping me tidy. It was when things in my house weren't as bad. It was cluttered, but it wasn't kind of extreme. But she was helping me tidy up. And she was lovely and quickly picked up that I was very anxious about what she was doing. Like, are you throwing anything away? And so she was picking things up and showing me so I could say, keep or throw or whatever. And we'd been at it for maybe an hour and we were, making some progress. And she was being so careful in picking things up to show me that she picked up an empty bottle of Pepsi, showed it me like with the same authenticity as she had showed me, an ornament or a piece of art or something. And I just couldn't stop laughing because I loved that she was approaching it that way. And I loved that she was being so careful. And I just had a moment of seeing how ridiculous things were that she felt she had to check with me about a crushed empty Pepsi bottle. And when I started laughing, she started laughing, and it breaks the tension.
Yeah.
And as you say, you're not going to laugh through it, but that moment of like, this is quite ridiculous, isn't it? Or something. Yeah, you breathe out a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's, the bottom line is, for a professional organizer needs to respect your stuff and your story. And so, we've worked with people where, we've had, full floors full of pizza boxes and Pepsi bottles and stuff like that. And we've asked the question, and that's when we can get to so how do you feel about all these things? Are you happy for me to just let them go? Some people are like, I am, but I want you to open the lid every time to make sure there's nothing inside. There's something that's happened in the past that means that it's difficult, and we need to respect that. And it is easier, and quicker then, if that's what they were looking for, to get to that stage of, do you know what? I feel comfortable enough that you're checking those pizza boxes yourself and that you can make that decision. And that's where we need to get to. So we've got to go slowly with it, but it's about respect, and it's about understanding what the other person needs. Do you talk about pizza box? It's a bit ridiculous, but just an example. But people who hoard are anxious about lots of different things that are, to most people, completely irrational. But we need to accept that irrationality is part of the thing that we're dealing with and trying to work through, and slowly but surely build up that comfort. And that's why, if people do it in the wrong way, it's so detrimental, because, and we've still got people that we work with all the time who are like, somebody came into my house 13 years ago and threw a pizza box away, and I know for sure, or I suspect, that my diamond ring was in there, or my passport, and that's the level of, and that's where irrational thinking takes you, or anxiety or depression or whatever it is that's sitting behind that. And so we can't allow people to feel out of control. Everything that we do, whether that's at the Declutter Hub with our clients, you need to feel completely in control of every single decision that you're making. And if that takes us 5 hours to go through one bag of things, but you're happy that you've made the right decisions at the end of that, that's a job well done. And that's what it is. But that takes patience, which is why you need to, and any professional organizer is going to say, yeah, I'm patient. But I know I know where my patience is like, I need to pass that on to somebody else because I am patient, really, really patient. But sometimes I'm like, I can't do this. Do you know what I mean? And it needs too much more patience than I've got. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And for some people, I have a theory that hoarders see potential in things more than people who don't hoard do. And certainly I know for me, there are things that would look like rubbish to other people and I see potential in them or want to keep them. So I'm also aware that I don't see any potential in an empty Pepsi bottle, but there will be listeners thinking, oh, I know what I'd do with an empty, I would turn it into a plant pot, or I would, and so my support worker way back was right to check. I may have said, no, I need Pepsi bottles for a craft project.
I was reading a thing actually on that just before we came on, when I was reading through our forum posts, and we're in the middle actually at the moment of a 40 days, 40 items challenge, which is not the way that we normally do things, but it's something to keep people going, and people love it and people find different things. And it's so insightful. And, obviously we teach people to do it in a very structured way as well, but every now and again we'll throw a challenge into the mix. And but it really works for a lot of people, because it doesn't mean you've got to go through a whole thing. It's like, I need to find one thing a day, and that's really helping me. And then invariably they will find more. But there was a post from a lady who had loads of tops, and she'll be fine for me saying this, I'm not going to tell you who she is or anything, loads of tops of medicine bottles. And I think, so I'm not quite sure where she was in the world, but you could recycle the bottoms, but you couldn't recycle the tops, a little bit like our milk bottles here, right?
Yeah.
And she said, I really, really struggle with throwing away plastic. And that's it. So we've got sustainability thrown into the mix as well, and recycling. And she'd made this big sort of breakthrough and managed to find someone that was going to take these. And so she got rid of like 50 or 60 of them, but she polished them up. She'd had them on a free cycle group. She'd had them. And so I think it's finding a way through those kind of things to get to a point which goes, what do I want? The space or the stuff? What's more important to me? The progress or the barrier? Because that's a barrier that's stopping you from getting to where you want to be. But that's not an easy thing, and that doesn't happen overnight. And so for a professional organizer to come in and think they're going to change the world in 5 hours, do you know what I mean? If we work with somebody with hoarding behaviours, we're there for a lifetime. We know that. We're there for as long as we are going to be professional organisers. But as long as that person is making visible progress and feeling happy with the progress that they're making, and hopefully starting to curb some of those acquisition tendencies as well. So we're looking at that as part of it. So we're not just looking at getting rid of stuff. We're looking at mindset change. And mindset change is difficult when you've got hoarding behaviours. So it's not just like, oh, I've changed my mindset and don't go shopping anymore, because you've done a lifetime of that. So it takes some time. So, it's all about the control that you feel. And that's why, TV programs about hoarding, make us very cross, because there's no control whatsoever from that person. And I can't really watch them, because I'm just like, it's so against what I believe and what I know is the right thing. It's just sensationalist TV that's there for entertainment, and that's so detrimental to what you're doing to that person. Sometimes it's not. There are some programs that are sensitive. There are some programs where it's better, but many of them are kind of like, oh, do you know what I mean? It's just like putting a plaster over a problem. And
I think it's worse even than that, because my thoughts about those programs are not a secret on this podcast. I am not a fan of them. Like you say, there's the odd one that's done thoughtfully and carefully, but I think the majority of them, it's done in a way that looks so traumatic for the hoarder, because that makes it more entertaining. And if that person, uses hoarding as a coping strategy,
Yeah.
then when they're re-traumatized by this process of people coming in and forcing decisions that they're not ready to make, then it feels inevitable that they're going to double down and fill their house back up, because that's what they do to cope with difficult feelings.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. We could do a whole podcast with something. And and actually a lot of the decluttering programs that are on there, like the Stacey Solomon show, they are digging deeper into the emotional connection with stuff,
Right.
and not just the stuff. So they're getting better, so I prefer those to some of the, but that's not, hoarding programs are different. So a lot of some of the American ones are going down the right pathway. And we know there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes as well than the TV program. So that's the important thing. But I don't know. It's just so traumatic for the person. And, we get calls from producers all the time. Hi, have you got any clients that might want to come on the TV? I'm like, are you actually having a laugh? Like,
I get messages from them saying, like, do you have any listeners who would come on? And I'm just like, that is not something I'm going to direct people to.
Because ultimately, I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like, no, I would never,
Yeah.
no, just a no. Now, there are instances, of course, where somebody has had a breakthrough. So they've had therapy, they're on medication, for whatever reason, they are like, okay, that's sorted. I'm ready to move forward. And I need someone logistically with that process. And often as professional organisers, that's when people will come to us. It's when they've started to make those initial breakthroughs. We normally work with people who have hit rock bottom and obviously are like, I can't do this anymore. I need to start making that positive progress. So we tend to see people on the upwards trajectory if they call us themselves. But obviously what happens quite a lot is we're called by a family member, we're called by social services, social prescribers. And our first question is, but does the person want it themselves? Because whenever there is a third party referral, which is what we would call it, it never works. I'm not going to lie.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not saying never, so I shouldn't say never because it does sometimes, but it's a rarity and we've got a big job on, or the family member or the social services or whatever. And it's normally in a crisis situation. And, so the person's got to want it themselves.
Yeah. It's all very well your doctor or, your social worker or something saying you need help, whether that's counselling, decluttering, whatever. But if you're not there yet, I know how much I dig my heels in sometimes with stuff. And I know these days I have enough awareness to know when I'm being irrational, but it still gets me even when I can see that I'm not being rational. And that's digging my heels in when I really want to change. So the amount I would dig my heels in if someone was forcing me, it would be I would be impossible to work with in that situation. I know I would.
Yeah. You've got to be in the right mental headspace for any kind of transformational process. You have to be ready, not even transformational, anything where you want to execute change in your life, you have to completely be ready because it's something that's going to involve so much effort, so much determination and almost single-minded focus. You've got to go all in, really, haven't you? That's the thing. And so it's tough, because you've got this thing, talking about asking for help. You've got people who really, really, really want to help, family members, social services, they're like, they see the reality of what having less stuff in your home is going to mean for your quality of life. And so it's well-meaning, it's never going to work, until, the stars need to align, you need to get the right person at the right time, and you need to be in the right headspace. And even when somebody might come and might be going great guns on something and make positive progress, medication issues, a sudden bout of anxiety or depression, something that just comes from left field can set people right off track. And that might be for 6 or 12 months. And then we're right back to square one again. So, but every little, way forward we're eking towards that goal. So it sounds like I'm saying that it doesn't work. Honestly, we've had so many success stories, but success with somebody who has hoarding tendencies is probably a little bit different to some of the success stories that we see with other types of clients that we work with.
Do you want to be a de-hoarding darling? You can be now at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/darling. If you love the podcast and want a bit extra, you can finally sign up to be a de-hoarding darling. Members will get an exclusive monthly post with an additional top tip, some podcast and music recommendations, and a personal update from me about how things are going. Find out the full details at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/darling.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
A lot can happen in the next 3 years. Like a chatbot may be your new best friend. But what won't change? Needing health insurance. United Healthcare Tri-Term Medical Plans are available for these changing times. Underwritten by Golden Rule Insurance Company, they offer budget-friendly, flexible coverage for people who are in between jobs or missed open enrollment. The plans last nearly 3 years in some states, with access to a nationwide network of doctors and hospitals. So for whatever tomorrow brings, United Healthcare Tri-Term Medical Plans may be for you. Learn more at uh1.com.
So if someone finds an organizer who seems suitable, reads their website, has a chat with them to get a sense of their vibe, and ideally they're experienced with, if not working with hoarding, some degree of kind of mental health, emotional health, social support, that kind of thing. And is there like a set process that all organizers follow, or what can people expect if they ask for help?
I mean, I think the first thing, if you do have a very, very full home, then you need to be clear about that so that the person on the other end, so don't try and shroud it in something that it isn't. You don't necessarily need to use the term hoarding if you struggle with that, but make it clear that you've got high volumes of stuff and the kinds of things that you find difficult. Because what we find, we need to get, after 13 years of listening to phone calls, we can kind of read the signs and hear like, okay, this sounds like this kind of situation, but it's not for us to ask or, be so presumptuous to use terminology. So it's important that you're honest, because we need to break through, because of course you've got loads of people in life who go, oh, I'm a hoarder, in a kind of flippant way when they're not. And, and we need to forgive that, because there's a lot of people who don't understand. And so that's fine as well. But as professionals, we need to understand whether we're the right people. If we have some, more often than not, we do a face-to-face consultation with most of our clients. Sometimes we don't do, based on circumstances and timing and things. But if it's a home lived in by a hoarder, then we would expect to do a consultation so we can look and assess the volumes, the safety. Sometimes we've got sort of biohazardous stuff going on, might be squalid situations. We know how far we will go and what kind of environments we're comfortable to work in, because it is about us feeling comfortable to work in those environments as well. And so we need to assess, and we need to, so a consultation is for us to assess in that situation, for us to get a feel for how this is going to go. But more importantly, it's for us to listen. Okay. So that consultation has got two strings. We need to work stuff out for ourselves and work out whether we're the right people, and you need to work out whether we feel like we're the right fit for you. And we need to, so we're not going to do anything in that first session. We're just going to do a little bit of talking and hopefully more listening to you and what your individual circumstances are. But equally, if you're somebody who struggled with serious mental health, if you've got trauma, some people open up about everything, other people are more guarded, and that will unfold as it goes on. But I think, if it's a sort of an unusual situation, I think you should be try and be as open and upfront about at least the volumes or the environment that you're working with, so that you're not wasting time talking to somebody who's just going to come in and run for the hills. Do you know what I mean? That you get the right person there. Yeah. And so I think that's important. And then, but going on from there, I think it's important that the organizer explains how it's all going to work, what they can expect from you. Even down to, we'll bring some bin bags with us. We'll bring some boxes to organize into. So the process itself. I think it's important that, because a lot of people are very nervous, obviously, having a professional organizer is not a cheap thing to have. It's going to cost money. So I think you need to know what you're in for in terms of that. But I think it's about managing expectations. From our perspective, we can only work and make progress as fast as you will allow us to do. And so it's important, that the process is not how many hours is it going to take to do your living room. We have got no idea about that until we get into the home and realize, whether you're going to take 20 seconds or 20 minutes to make a decision on something. Often, if there are very full volumes, it's difficult for us to get a real judgment on what type of clutter is there. But there's a lot of sentimental, there's a lot of paperwork we need to go through. We will be looking for the big wins. And so we'll be looking for big cardboard boxes that we can get rid of, appliance boxes or whatever that is. We will be looking for logistic things when we first start, but you might feel very anxious about those things that we consider to be big wins as well. So that's not a game changer. But I think, so that's the consultation, but I think you need to understand the process. You need to understand that this is going to evolve, and nobody should say it's going to cost you £250 for a session. Do you know what I mean? Yes, we can be here for 5 hours and it's going to cost you that, for example, but not, and we're going to get this amount done in that time, because that's just not possible to assess. So I think it's very much about, let's work together for a first session, and then we can work out how it's all going, and then we can start to work from there. And so I think it's very difficult to start to put, and that's what we struggle with social services, because they'll have a budget, which is often very small, which is great, because I think it can be a good starting point for you to have a breakthrough in terms of not everybody is against me and wants me to get rid of everything. So sometimes it can just be about, I just need to build up a little bit of trust with somebody who's a professional to know that I can do this, because sometimes it seems so overwhelming that you don't feel that you're ever going to make any progress. So I think if social services offer help, or any other, charities, prescribers, and if you're lucky enough to get budget, which is tricky, as I'm sure all your listeners know, it's not easy. If you feel comfortable, take that, because I think one session with the right professional will help in some way to get you through a little bit. It's not going to fix the whole home, but it will help a little bit. So it's worth it. Yeah.
And I think also, as well as it being a small amount of practical help, you would also get skills. You would learn questions to ask yourself about items that you might not have thought of. But if the professional organizer, every time you pick something up, asks 3 particular questions, then you can carry that on once they've gone.
Absolutely. Yeah. So those are the kind of things, really. I think it's about setting those boundaries at the beginning, setting those goals. It's all about the relationship between the two people working together. And then, the stuff is secondary. Putting stuff into a bin bag for us is a byproduct of the decluttering process. It's about that emotional breakthrough, which is like, do you know what, to your social worker who was helping you, do you know what, I know there are a lot of empty, Pepsi bottles, but honestly, you've got my permission to not show me those things and to just bag them up and put them into recycling for me. And those kind of things can really help. So you can make big progress. It can be very, very slow, or we can work through things quite rapidly if we get those decisions out of the way. That's why I was saying be looking for big wins. And so often in a hoarded, there are many homes that don't have rubbish. Then, there are some that do. There are some where it's just stuff and everything is valuable and has a purpose and things like that. But sometimes there is kind of trash, rubbish, garbage that can kind of go for recycling. And those, it's nice to just skim that off the surface sometimes as well. So it's very different. Every home is different. Every person is different. Every space is different. And so there's no one size fits all. And so it's really just about your home and you explaining what you want out of the process.
I think I'd be interested to hear how you look at pacing the work, because again, with that mental health worker, because she was being so diligent and so careful, I started to trust her that she wasn't going to throw things away that might be valuable, because she was being so respectful of, if I said, no, I want to keep that, that was okay, because it was my stuff. She kept reiterating that it's your stuff, it's up to you. And so the more we did that, and the more I realized she wasn't going to secretly throw things away without me seeing, the more I trusted her to get on with it. Yeah. Because she was getting an idea of what I might want to keep and what I might not. But I think with a lot of hoarders, I'm interested to hear how you address the kind of, you don't want to rush somebody and make them panic and shut down. But equally, I think a lot of hoarders might find themselves prevaricating a bit and trying to slow the process down out of anxiety or fear or uncertainty. So how do you, because you want to keep things moving, but you don't want to rush somebody, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I think it's all about reading the situation and knowing. And once you've done one session with somebody, you know how long is sensible. And then when you need to refresh and have a cup of tea, and that might be 10 minutes, it might be every hour, it might be every 3 hours. Equally, what's interesting as well is sometimes we have to slow people down. So sometimes people get so wrapped up in the thing that we're like, whoa, this is going too fast. And I can see a lack of control, particularly when we're getting towards the end of a session. The skill is also, what we have to do is it's kind of like a little bit of a game almost, where we need to, because our job really is to, we are there to try and push you a little bit out of your comfort zone. If you sit firmly in your comfort zone, we won't let anything go and we won't make progress. And so it is about us explaining to you, right, okay, so you've decided that so we've done an hour, you've managed to let go of one thing. And so that's fine. And that's your decision. It's your stuff, completely respectful of that. But you need to understand that if you continue down this route, you won't achieve your goals. So what do you want? Do you want me to, and to ask, like I would say, how do you feel this is going? Do you feel under pressure? Please let me know. I mean, I'm very good at, I'm at high levels of emotional intelligence, as all professional organisers should have, to see in somebody's eyes whether they're feeling anxious about something. But everybody that has hoarding tendencies is probably going to be anxious. It comes with the territory, or a little bit depressed, or up and down, or a bit chaotic. There's loads of things that come with that. And so I think it's just this kind of, a game sounds wrong, but it's working out, what can I do? It is really complex because everyone's different. And so it's about reading the room and going, I can see that she's really struggling. Let's just have a little break for a minute. But I think more importantly, and whether this is standard clutter or whether this is, anywhere else, we have to work in places that are least emotionally difficult first. So in the Declutter Hub, what we have is we have a roadmap. So we have all of our courses on all of our different rooms, for example. And Ingrid and I have worked out, in general terms, that there are some rooms that are easier than others, because when we look at the emotions involved in a kitchen, and a lot of people are very surprised by this, the emotions are typically much more practical. Yes, we do have emotions in kitchens. We have aspiration, we have bulk buying, we have, different things that come into a kitchen, but they're not as difficult as clothing. They're not as difficult about delayed decisions in garages. And so we have a roadmap which takes people step by step on a journey, which takes the thinking out of it, because you just go, what am I doing today? And you just carry on with the roadmap. So that's important, where you don't have to look at an abundance of stuff throughout your whole home and go, well, where would I start? Because I've got to do everything. And so it just takes you like that. But I think it's important. We're not going to dive straight into paperwork on the first session, even though that paperwork might be what is visible on the top of all that clutter. Yeah. So particularly in a home that's very full, your most precious things are going to be on the top. Yeah. And so we need to delve deep, kind of move some stuff logistically out of the way and try and, see what's underneath, because the stuff that's underneath will typically be less difficult or has been buried a little while. And we're like, actually, you've not missed it, and you find those decisions easier. And so I think it's, a combination of logistics, working out what what stuff is the least emotional to deal with, and understanding that you're going to fluctuate throughout a session and getting the right length of session. So often people will say, well, I feel I can only do an hour. And so we're talking about, but obviously we've got to marry up progress, business as well, because we that sounds very mercenary, but actually it's got to work for us as well as a business. And so our minimum session length is 3 hours, but we will try to get to 5 hours, very rarely do more than 5, but and that might build over time, because we do need to, you're like, I think I can only do an hour. That's what I feel as if I can do, but actually we're there to kind of go, well, it's going to be a little bit easier. You're going to have somebody helping you along the way, and you just trust us. But of course, if you're having a meltdown after an hour, we're going to leave, so and come back another day. But so it's all about just trying to push that a little bit out of your comfort zone, and then going, no, that didn't work, let me pull back on that. So there's got to be a professional element to it, where we are trying to give you our expertise and not just there, because you may as well just do it on your own or with a friend then, mightn't you? You know what I mean? So that's what it's all about.
It's interesting, because you've said two things that I always advocate as well, which is quite reassuring, because people often ask where to start. That's always the question. And I always say, with the big wins, like cardboard boxes, that's always the example I use, because it makes a visual difference, and that helps to keep you motivated. And also, don't start with family photos. Start with the stuff that's easy for you. And what's easy for you is different to what's easy for me. For me, empty food containers, fine. They can go. I don't have any kind of emotional connection to those. And so if there's those around, that tends to be where I start, because you can get into the flow while doing something that isn't difficult. And then by the time you get to the slightly harder stuff, you are in the zone a bit, and you've been practicing throwing away. I think there's a lot to be said for just the action of doing it, and build up to the stuff that will be hard, which might be books, it might be clothes, it might be letters, it might be anything, but don't start with the hard stuff. Yeah,
it'll come as no surprise that books, paperwork, sentimental photographs are all right at the end of our roadmap. In our membership, we've got something called our Room of Doom training, which is, and I'm very conscious that if you live with very full volumes, you've probably got more than one room of doom, or a house of doom, or many rooms of doom. But people's minds naturally go to that place first, because our minds automatically take us to the most difficult thing, the thing that we feel that we've got a real problem, whether that's books or things that we've been challenged on, DVD collections. And that's the kind of thing our minds take us there, and that's where we think we should go. And that's not the place to start. You need to build up your decluttering muscle until you get to those places, so that you're ready when you get to it. But things like that, the other thing that I've not mentioned is really, it's not just about decluttering when you're doing very full volumes, it's about logistics. And so we need to work out, we need to create space, we need to make it safe, we need to, and sometimes that just involves kind of almost shoveling up stuff and putting it into boxes and leaving it, just so you can feel a little bit of organization and a little bit of clarity in the beginning. Because it depends on whether your floors are covered or whether you've got space, whether you can do that. But, go vertical with your boxes, so you can start to, and just put them to one side and just go in one box at a time. It's very difficult, logistically. It's difficult. It's a completely different process than standard decluttering, really, because you can't gather like with like that easily, because you can't put your hands on everything all at the same time. So we just have to go at it in a very, very different way often.
I find that listeners who need to dehoard or want to dehoard tend to be in two categories. There are those who are like the position I'm in, where I've got to a point where I'm sick of living like this and I want to change. And there are people who are perhaps not ready, but have been threatened with having their children taken away or being evicted or something like that, and are having to de-hoard in a kind of crisis situation.
Yeah.
Will professional organisers work with people in either of those scenarios? Like, would you also work with somebody who needed to de-hoard in a crisis as much as you would in an ongoing way?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think, but we might, what we were talking about before, where it's almost like a third party referral. If this is a crisis situation, it would be you're kind of almost being forced into it against your will, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe not against your will, because you kind of want it deep down. You kind of want it really badly. But every part of your body is saying no, 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 no. This is too hard, too hard, too hard. And so, yes, we would totally work with you in that situation. And quite often what we get in crisis situations is just the fact that it might stave off the kind of putting your children into care just to show that you are making positive steps forward. That might be enough to kind of keep that at bay for a little while. So it's important to, so we do, but we get quite frantic, often phone calls from people, and sometimes we can't respond as quickly as people need us to.
Yeah. The landlord's coming on Saturday.
Yeah. And so, and of course, people who don't work in this environment don't understand how long these things take and how they want house clearance. They want a skip and house clearance. They don't want sensitivity and empathy and slow process that's going to lead to long-term change. And we would rather work with somebody for 5-10 years. And it would be better, to be fair, for social services for us to do it in that way than it would to clear down house clearance and then to come back again in 6 or 12 months and do the same thing. And so it's tricky, it's far from sorted. Like, we get frustrated as professionals because we would love for, housing associations, social services to just give us the funding that we need to make a difference that is ultimately going to save them money,
Yes.
So it's a kind of, but things need to be paid for. And that's the sad thing. And I think when we start as professional organisers, we would love to help everybody because that's what it is. But everybody needs us in a different way. And so, yeah, it's difficult. It's really tricky. And it's better than it was, much better than it was. And also social services now are utilising our services for other things than hoarding, which is good as well. Understanding that people have got chronic disorganisation issues and need help for ADHD, for, independence at home. So that's quite nice. There's definitely a shift in terms of understanding, hoarding behaviours, understanding mental health issues and how that impacts on the home. So we like that as an industry, because we know how we can help, and it's just getting but not everybody can self-fund. We love, of course, if somebody can self-fund and we don't need to worry about a third party.
Yeah.
Because it means that you have reached out for help. So that's the most important thing. And it means that hopefully there's going to be, funding to continue the process to a point where we can make a real tangible difference to you. And so, but it's not, it's not a cheap service. And that's the problem, isn't it? It's tricky. It's just.
And especially if somebody's having it in combination with therapy, which is also not cheap, it's really difficult.
It is.
So if people want to find you online, if they want to know a bit about your membership site, if they want to join your Facebook group, where can they do all that? Yeah,
so our one-to-one service is the Clutter Fairy. Which sounds quite trite. I know it sounds like we come and wave a magic wand. It's a great brand, but we don't just wave that magic wand and sort it all out. We help people in the way that we've been talking about on the podcast. We pretty much cover the whole of the northwest of England now. So just give us a call. You can find us at clutterfairy.co.uk. The Declutter Hub, which is our online global membership, which is more designed. So the Clutter Fairy is that we would come in and help you one-to-one. The Declutter Hub is designed for people who can't afford a professional organizer or don't want a professional organizer, haven't got that confidence to go down that one-to-one route and think I want to do it myself and learn. So the Declutter Hub, we teach you the skills, the emotions, right? I'm not going to lie. Yes, we teach you the skills, how to do the job. But what we teach you is these are the kind of things these kind of irrational, sometimes strange emotions that we all have with clutter that are completely standard, that are going to hold you back from making the decision that you want to do. And it's understanding those emotions that allows you to have those breakthroughs. So the Declutter Hub is our online membership. We have our podcast, the Declutter Hub podcast, 230, whatever it is, episodes, and all different things, some practical, some quick 10 things.
There's an how to sort out your underwear drawer I listened to recently.
We have some are more serious, some of the fantastic guests on. That's great. And then we have a Facebook group as well, which is the Declutter Hub community. You're asking me now. You're asking me what it is. And I need to know these things, don't I?
I link to everything from the show notes. So, no worries there. And I think I found it earlier anyway. It's linked to on your website. So.
Yeah, definitely.
And finally, this will be episode 85 of this podcast. Any tips for getting to 230 episodes?
Oh, I know. It's hard, isn't it? It's really hard. And I was listening to one where you talk about transcribing the podcast yourself and stuff like that. Yeah, it's not easy running a podcast, and that's what I love about this and about yours in particular. And ours is very niche, of course, in the decluttering, but hoarding is even more niche than that. But to be able to find a community of people that understand you and that you can share, that you can learn from, is so important. But yeah, so we love the podcast, right? Absolutely love it. When we started out, we were like, oh yeah, we like to talk. Let's just do some talk. And I don't think we had any idea about it. Yeah. The tips to get to 250, I would say consistency is really, really important. Constantly changing and evolving. I think personality is a big one for Ingrid and I. I think, we need to make it sort of fun, and we need to make it honest and fun. And, there's kind of no holds barred in ours. And Ingrid and I, certainly a lot of people come to us because of the kind of camaraderie, let's call it, that we've got between the two of us.
Yeah, I've listened for a long time, and you clearly get on. It doesn't feel like manufactured for the podcast. You're clearly two women who just bounce off each other and, get on really well. And that makes it enjoyable to listen to. Yeah.
So so we're nearly at 250, so nearly 5 years in. But yeah, we love the podcast. We'd love other people to come in and listen and see if there's some episodes that are going to resonate with you, whether that's your underwear drawer or your talking to Jasmine about hoarding or ADHD or OCD or different things. There's loads of stuff in there to go at, so please do come along and listen.
Or indeed talking to me about hoarding.
Absolutely.
Coming soon.
Yeah, I can't wait. I don't know what episode that's going to be. Yes, episode 239, I think, is what it is. I should know that. I should have it next to me. But yes, no, exactly. No, and we're very, very excited for you to come on the podcast because we have spoken about hoarding, but we've only spoken about hoarding to hoarding professionals. So we're very excited to hear it from you. So important.
Excellent. Lesley, thank you so much. That's been so interesting to hear from a professional organiser's point of view how it all works.
I know. No, it's been nice. I just hope that people have the confidence to find the right people. It's all about finding the right people. Sometimes we get a bit cross because, we hear loads of those stories of people that have had the wrong person. And it's like, oh, but there's so many good people out there. We want you to find the right person, but that's going to take a little bit of digging. It might take you having 5 consultations with people until you see the right fit. But yeah, go for it because it can be a massive help. And in a world where you feel very isolated and as if no one's there to help.
And maybe the 5th person you talk to says, do this isn't for me, but I know just the woman. Or there's, someone across the city who specializes in exactly this. So people know other people, don't they? So recommendations.
Yeah, exactly. We know when we have consultations with people who hoard, we know where our boundaries are in terms of where you will be better off working with somebody else and where we can, because we can absolutely do it because the principles are the same. And so, we know where we stop and where somebody else needs to take over.
Amazing. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Do you want to be a de-hoarding darling? You can be now at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/darling. If you love the podcast and want a bit extra, you can finally sign up to be a Hoarding darling. Members will get an exclusive monthly post with an additional top tip, some podcast and music recommendations, and a personal update from me about how things are going. Find out the full details at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/darling. So my top tip this week is a quote, allegedly from Pericles, but you know what they say about quotes on the internet. However, the quote is good regardless of who said it. Pericles, or some guy, said, "What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but what is worn into the lives of others." And as well as what you leave behind not being engraved in stone monuments, I think we need to remember that what we leave behind isn't a sofa and a pile of books and a load of clothes. It's what's woven into the lives of others. Okay, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding podcast. You can find more online at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. You can find me on Twitter at @thathoarder and on Facebook at Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder. To find out more about how you can support this podcast and the overall project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support and do subscribe to this podcast so you make sure you don't miss any future episodes.
Now on Broadway, An Enemy of the People is a New York Times Critics' Pick. Jeremy Strong is one of the great actors of his generation, hails the Chicago Tribune. In a performance the Wall Street Journal praises as powerfully affecting and bitterly funny. Michael Imperioli sets off sparks, cheers the Hollywood Reporter. Victoria Pedretti is luminous, rains variety. From director Sam Gold and playwright Amy Herzog, An Enemy of the People is urgent, electrifying, and haunting, declares USA Today. An Enemy of the People, on Broadway through June 16th only.
Hey everyone, Craig Robinson here. I want you to check out the Ways to Win podcast, brought to you by Ford and the new 2024 Ford F-150 truck. On Ways to Win, Coach Cal and I will discuss leadership lessons we've learned. We know all about the days spent perfecting your craft outside of the limelight and have knowledge to share about how strength, inspiration, encouragement, and adaptability are the key ingredients to drive toward your dreams. And those same ingredients can be found in the new 2024 Ford F-150 truck. So check out my podcast, Ways to Win, and also check out the new 2024 Ford F-150 truck. Learn more at Ford.com. Built Ford tough, built Ford proud.